the Supreme Court of the United States of America has stripped away the state of New York's right and responsibility to protect its citizens with a decision which we are still digesting, which is frightful in its scope of how they are setting back this nation and our ability to protect our citizens back to the days of our founding fathers. And the language we're reading is shocking. I will make some remarks as my counsel finds the exact language I want to. Where's Liz? We had language. I want to read this because I think everyone should know what just happened here. Highlighted language. Find it. As governor of the state of New York, my number one priority is to keep New Yorkers safe. But today, the Supreme Court is sending us backwards in our efforts to protect families and prevent gun violence. And it's particularly painful that this came down at this moment when we're still dealing with families in pain from mass shootings that have occurred, the loss of life, their beloved children and grandchildren. Today, the Supreme Court struck down a New York law that limits who can carry concealed weapons. Does everyone understand what a concealed weapon means? That you have no forewarning, that someone can hide a weapon on them and go into our subways, go into our grocery stores, like stores up in Buffalo, New York, where I'm from, go into a school in Parkland or Uvalde. This could place millions of New Yorkers in harm's way. And this is at a time when we're still mourning the loss of lives, as I just mentioned. This decision isn't just reckless, it's reprehensible. It's not what New Yorkers want. And we should have the right of determination of what we want to do in terms of our gun laws in our state. If the federal government will not have sweeping laws to protect us, then our states and our governors have a moral responsibility to do what we can and have laws that protect our citizens because of what is going on, the insanity of the gun culture that has now possessed everyone all the way up to even to the Supreme Court. The law we're talking about has been in place since the early 1900s. And now to have our ability to determine who is eligible for a concealed carry permit. This is not an ordinary permit. This is a special use that you can hide it from people. We have limitations if it's for a proper cause. Someone who's been threatened, someone who needs it for their job as a security guard. We have classifications where it is allowed and have been allowed for over 100 years. But we do not need people entering our subways, our restaurants, our movie theaters with concealed weapons. We don't need more guns on our streets. We're already dealing with a major gun violence crisis. We don't need to add more fuel to this fire. But I will tell New Yorkers, we've been ready for this. We feared this day would come, and it came. At this very moment, we were about to sign a law into place, the origins of which was the loss of a 14-year-old child, Alyssa, in her school. The confluence of these two events is shocking. But again, I'm going to reassure this state. We are reading the language as we speak. We've been preparing, but we have been working with a team of experts, legal experts from all over this country, and organizations like Everytown, true leaders, to make sure that we are prepared. I'm prepared to call the legislature back into session to deal with this. We've been in contact with the leadership. We're just looking at dates. Everyone wants a little bit of time to digest this. But I will say we are not powerless in this situation. We're not going to cede our rights that easily, despite the best efforts of the politicized Supreme Court of the United States of America. We have the power of the pen, and I just want to read some language here. Apparently, the Supreme Court has now decided, with this far-reaching decision that the two-step standard that had been in place since Heller versus McDonald, where they analyze the Second Amendment, where it combines history, we have a history, yes we do, but also means and scrutiny. Does the means of the restriction justify the infringement? And most people would say, yes, we have a right to protect people from gun violence. But I'll simply say in our very quick analysis, because this is only minutes old, they have now said that the government must demonstrate that the regulation is consistent with this nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation. That's it. No longer can we strike the balance. Only if a firearm regulation is consistent with this nation's historical tradition may a court conclude that the individual's conduct falls outside the Second Amendment's unqualified command. Shocking. Absolutely shocking that they have taken away our right to have reasonable restrictions. We can have restrictions on speech. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. But somehow there's no restrictions allowed on the Second Amendment. This is New York. We don't back down. We fight back. And we'll be alerting the public, the media, in the very short term, of exactly what our language that we've been analyzing. We have language we'd like to now enact into law. We'll be sharing that with the leaders. And I'm sorry this dark day has come. That we're supposed to go back to what was in place since 1788 when the Constitution of the United States of America was ratified. And I would like to point out to the Supreme Court justices that the only weapons at the time were muskets. I'm prepared to go back to muskets. I don't think they envision the high-capacity assault weapon magazines intended for battlefields as being covered from this, but I guess we're just going to have to disagree. So I'll return to our purpose of being here and let people know that our new laws are going to be looking at restrictions on sensitive locations, changing the permitting process, creating a threshold for those. We're going to have training requirements. We're going to make sure that people have concealed weapons as specified training. We have a whole lot of ideas. And also look at a system where businesses and private property owners would have the right to protect themselves. So stay tuned. Stay tuned. We're just getting started here. And today, we are here to talk about another step that we think is so important to protect the lives of our children in a school setting. We lost children and teacher, local teacher, Scott Beagle. His parents are here. We lost people in Uvalde, lost children, teachers. Today we're taking our rage and turning it into action. Earlier this month, I signed a nation-leading comprehensive law to strengthen our gun legislation, close loopholes, raise the age to buy a semi-automatic weapon from 18 to 21, and I call on Congress to do the same, as well as investing over $250 million into gun violence prevention programs. I also recently signed into law legislation to strengthen our red flag law, which expanded the list of people who can file an extreme risk order of protection. But ahead of those new laws going into effect next month, I want you to know our administration is being aggressive, working on a robust, comprehensive public awareness campaign to educate key groups, particularly those in schools, that there is a now overhauled red flag law. We're partnering with in-person training, virtual trainings this summer with school board members, school attorneys, superintendents, teachers, principals, parents, as well as educating over 660,000 educators We think this is so important. People need to know what this means, what rights are behind it, as well as making sure that we're having roundtables with local law enforcement, county law enforcement, all led by our state police, and additional training for our state police as well. So we're creating a comprehensive package of digital and physical education materials that'll be released in the next couple of weeks. So I wanted to address that as well. But we're not stopping there either. We're not stopping. We now have the strongest gun safety laws in America, but as I continue to say, there is more work to be done. And ultimately, I believe that we'll be judged by history and how we respond to this crisis. Do we stand up with courage? Do we make the right decisions? Do we put the lives of others first? The right of a child to stay alive in school versus the right of someone to carry a gun. I know where I come down on that equation. And we'll be judged if we did everything we could. Today we're taking a further step. I'm proud to sign Alyssa's law to protect the children who sit in the classroom so innocent, just trying to get an education, just trying to listen, try to make friends. And I want to thank our sponsors for their vision. Senator Elijah Reichlin-Melnick, I want to thank him for being a tremendous leader in our legislature, and Assemblymember Ken Zebrowski. The two of you stood up. You stood up when we needed leadership, and I thank you for that. This legislation will require school districts to evaluate and consider the installation of silent panic alarms in school buildings that alert law enforcement directly in the case of an active shooter. Now, why is that so important? This goes beyond the traditional panic alarm systems, a panic button at a desk. You can do that, but there's new technology. There's wireless panic buttons, computer and cell phone apps. Suffolk districts and school districts in Suffolk County already using a cell phone app, which actually bypasses 911. Why do you want to do that? Because as we saw with the shooting in Buffalo, sometimes the response is not what you need in terms of the dispatch. And we saw in Uvalde, too much time was lost, way too much time was lost. So you bypass 911, you go right to law enforcement. An app can show that there is an active shooter in a school to draw the attention that second, so no time is lost. Because we saw in Uvalde and Parkland, police response time is imperative to saving lives. So teachers and staff will be able to discreetly alert law enforcement as well as other teachers and staff in the building. It's not a mandate, but I stand by here today and ask all school districts to adopt this. Please consider this technology to protect your students and your staff and your administrators. It will save lives. And this law is named after a 14-year-old. I'm sure she didn't think she was a little girl, but she's a little girl to all of us. Grandma and Grandpa are here. She was born in Queens, so she's a New Yorker. She may have been educated down in Parkland, but once a Queens girl, always a Queens girl. And she was killed at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas in Parkland, along with our beloved teacher, Scott. But following the tragedy, her parents, Lori and Dr. Ilan Alhadeff, they founded a foundation in her memory. And they've tirelessly advocated for the adoption of a silent panic alarm system in schools because they believe that that could save lives. So I want to thank the parents for what you've done and your dedication to ensuring that our kids are safe in schools. And I'm so in awe of how you could channel that pain into something so powerful, just like Linda and Michael did. You know, you're the ones we look up to. You're the ones we look up to because you're at this day after day, turning your personal tragedy into action so it doesn't happen to anyone else. And because of your hard work, states like New York are taking serious action to make sure that as many schools are covered as possible because no child should ever have to be in fear of going to school to learn. They're not that expensive, these panic alarms. They're not that expensive. Cost of a school district could be anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000. And what that does is literally on an app. You touch that app on your phone. I don't have a phone with me. Pretend this is a phone. You push the button. You push the button. And that'll save lives. So by signing this bill into law with Alyssa and her family in mind, they shouldn't have died. They don't have to die. And I want to leave with a message for our kids who've been under such stress. The fears that I never had to worry about growing up. Generations before them didn't have this fear. And now they do. They're looking to adults to protect them. And I want them to know we'll protect you. We're going to do everything we can. So you can just lead the lives of normal children. Just be kids. Get your education. Teachers just want to teach. Teachers just want to do what they have a passion about, sharing their talents with other kids. They just look at us to protect them. This is not the end of what we're going to do. As you heard about at the opening, we have a lot of work before us, but we're ready. Because here in New York, when there's a crisis, we just stand up and take action. We don't tolerate inaction. We won't be content. We will not grow numb. We will not become desensitized to the shock every time this happens and the news goes on to another story of the day or the story of the hour. That'll never happen here in the state of New York. And I will not rest until we have done everything we can to protect our kids, our teachers, our schools, and make our communities safe again. At this point, I'd like to introduce Alyssa's mother and father to share some words.
Good morning. My name is Ilan Alhadeff, and I live in Parkland, Florida. Prior to February 14, 2018, I was a stay-at-home soccer mom of 3 children. Valentine's Day of 2018, though, changed everything. When I received a text message saying, "Shots fired at Stoneman Douglas High School, kids running and jumping the fence." At that time, it was one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history. 17 lives were taken that day, including that of my 14-year-old daughter, Alyssa. Shortly after the tragedy, my husband and I decided to turn our grief and despair into action and purpose to ensure that all students are safe at school. We began a nonprofit organization called Make Our Schools Safe, whose mission is to empower students and staff to create and maintain a culture of safety within their school by starting a Make Our School Safe Club. We would not let Alyssa's death be in vain.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ilan Alhadeff, father of Alyssa. One of the most relevant factors in fatality reduction in mass shootings in a school or an on-campus incident of any kind is the response time of emergency personnel. Time equals life. Every minute counts during a life-threatening situation, and seconds can mean the difference between life and death. We're very thankful that Alyssa's Law can help with that and potentially save lives.
On February 14, 2018, as the horrific shooting was happening, I texted Alyssa. I told her to run and hide, that help was on the way. That help didn't arrive in time to save our daughter, Alyssa, who was shot 8 times. Alyssa's Law calls for the installation of panic alarm system. This layer of protection can assist teachers and students by simultaneously communicating with law enforcement. Faculty and staff on campus can pinpoint their exact location, providing first responders and law enforcement ample and accurate real-time information. Had Alyssa known the origin of the threat on February 14, there's a chance that Alyssa should have been able to respond effectively. Alyssa was our everything, a bright scholar, talented soccer player who wore the number 8, a wonderful friend to all that knew her, the center of our family. Alyssa and her memory is at the heart of this law, and the students and teachers in the state of New York will now benefit from your support of this legislation. Thank you to my husband, Ilan, community members, Jaden and Jordan Turner, Alyssa's Grammy and Pop-Up, and all the legislators that supported Alyssa's Law. Assemblyman Ken Zebrowski, Senator Elijah Reichlin-Melnick, Assemblyman Michael Lars, and Governor Hochul. Together, we will make our schools safe.
Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
beautiful. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you being part of this, even virtually. This is for your daughter, and we'll never forget Alyssa. Thank you. You mentioned the grandparents. I did want to recognize who we have here. We have Terry and David Rabinowitz, grandparents, New Jersey residents. That's all right. Florida? Okay. Today you're New Yorkers. And I'm sorry for what your families had to go through. I really am. It's incomprehensible. But you standing up, Alyssa's parents standing up, Linda, Michael, others who've stood up. I've said, I'm so proud of what you do. But I also want to recognize some other champions, as I mentioned. We have Michael Mulgrew, who'll be speaking in a couple moments, the president of the United Federation of Teachers. I thank him for what he does every day and protect our kids and our teachers. And also we'll be hearing from our sponsors, Senator Melnick, and also Assemblymember Ken Zebrowski. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Senator Melnick to give a few words. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Governor, for your leadership in signing this legislation and for all of the work that you are doing to make New York a beacon for gun safety legislation. On a day that we have seen the Supreme Court take us a giant step backwards, back to the days of the Old West when everybody walked around with a six-shooter on their hip. We're going back in that direction, unfortunately, because of the Supreme Court. But under Governor Hochul's leadership, New York is leading the way and doing everything we can to keep our communities and our schools and our kids safe. So thank you for that work, and I'm very grateful to be here as the sponsor of Alyssa's law in the state Senate. So Alyssa's cousins, Jordan and Jaden Turner, are both constituents of mine, residents of my hometown of Nyack, who I've known for many years. And so when tragedy hit in Parkland 4 years ago, it came home to me directly. It came home through the Turner family, and I knew about Alyssa's story, and I knew about her life. And this tragedy, even before I had run for the Senate or had any thought of running for the Senate. And so when I got there, I knew that we needed to do more. We needed to keep our kids safe in school. I began my career as an elementary school teacher, and so gun violence in schools is something that I take incredibly personally. And thinking of what the Alhadeff family has had to go through, it breaks your heart. No family in Florida, no family in New York, no family anywhere in our country should have to go through what this family has gone through and what so many other families in Florida, in Sandy Hook, in Uvalde, in all of these other places around the country have gone through. And so if we can save one life through this law, through getting our schools in New York State to put silent panic alarms that will trigger and link to law enforcement as quickly as possible when minutes could mean the difference between lives saved and lives lost, it will be worth it. And I encourage every school district out there in the state, if you don't have this system in place, please do it. Take advantage of this law, go out, get these panic button systems installed, and make sure that our kids and our teachers and everybody who uses our schools are safe and secure. Thank you so much, Governor, for signing this, and I'd like to welcome my Assembly colleague, Assemblyman Ken Zebrowski.
Thank you, Senator, and let me also start by thanking Governor Hochul for her leadership on this and so many other issues. Certainly, we have done what we can here in New York to protect New Yorkers, and I can say personally, Governor, I stand with you, ready to do whatever necessary to respond to this Supreme Court decision. Obviously, this bill emanates from a somber incident, and it's a somber day reading that decision, but we all stand ready to work with you. I also want to thank Speaker Hasty for his work in ushering this bill through, and I know our Education Committee Chair Mike Benedetto is here with us today. In those final weeks of session as we were trying to get this through, he was a champion that I worked with to get this onto the floor and passed, and certainly to Alyssa's family. I've said before, Lori flew from Florida up to Albany, walked through the halls of the Capitol, really put this bill on her back, and it shows you what a citizen can do. Obviously, what a citizen can do after dealing with an immense tragedy. And her grandparents, her grandmother was there with her. And I just want to thank everybody. As Elijah, Senator Reichlin-Melnick said earlier, we have constituents that were related. Jaden Jordan, who was a coach at the high school I went to down the street many years ago now, as you can see my hair graying. But we're a small town in Rockland County, and we had heard and seen that tragedy as U.S. citizens, but had a direct connection to it and thought, what could we do? And this is something we can do. And New York State has a requirement that there be a school safety plan. That is a law, and we have the state education department that has a set of regulations. And they even have a checklist of what school districts should consider. But one gap there is this direct line of communication that can happen between a school district and law enforcement that can save lives. And as the governor showed you before, there are apps available. So we want to make sure that everybody is utilizing every technology possible. So when they go through that checklist, as our school administrators go through that checklist, one specifically says, consider the direct line of communication, consider these panic alarms, because we all know what we should be doing is keeping these weapons out of the hands of New Yorkers that want to do people harm. But we know what we also need to do is to minimize the response time so that we can save as many lives as possible. So thank you, everybody, to all the advocates that helped get us here today, to my colleagues, to Alyssa's family, and also to our great governor, Governor Hochul. Thank you. But I have one other job, and that is always one last part. That is to introduce Michael Mulgrew, the president of the United Federation of Teachers. Michael.
Thank you, everyone. First, to the families, I stand in awe of you all for the fortitude, the courage, and the passion that you've taken such a horrible thing that happened, the loss of a life of a loved one of your families, and taking that and just saying, enough is enough. We're not backing down to anyone, whether it be at a state level or a city level or municipality or the federal government. We will stand up at all times and say enough is enough. So again, I thank you for all of that. And to the sponsors of the bill, and of course, Education Chair Benedetto, thank you for doing this. And the governor and I have conversations about things like this, and it's a bad day right now. It's a bad day. The teachers of the city, the teachers of the state, the teachers of this country are sick of this. They're disgusted by it. Right now, we know we're trying to deal with the fact that we're coming through a pandemic. We've never seen children with so much damage. And we're trying to work on all of that, but at the same time, we know this is something we have to do also. And that is what's going on in the heart of every teacher right now at this point. Their conversations are constant. What do we do? How are we supposed to deal with this also? Another thing is being put upon us. Well, to the teachers, what I say is, we're all going to do this together. We're working with the governor's office on all of the training, how this gets implemented in your school, the changes to our red flags law. That will all be done. We will work on all of this together and make sure that it is meaningful and everyone knows exactly what has to get done. Because they will do that work, because every teacher, every day now when they walk into a school say, will this be the day that I will have to make that choice? And we see every time this happens, the teacher makes that choice. They will protect their children. So, Governor, you have our full support, and I can't thank you enough for all of your vision to say we have to always get out in front of this. We have to constantly act, and this is New York, and we're not going to stand still. So it's now, I would like to take this moment to say, let's do something really positive, and let's sign that bill. So thank you so much.
I also want to recognize, as I mentioned, Education Chair Benedetto. Did you want to say anything about the occasion here? We also have the Lars Clemensen, the superintendent of the Hampton-based school district. Superintendent? I don't have my superintendent. Was there anything else you wanted to add to the program, Rob?
Thank you.
Okay. No, and I want to thank you and your school district for being visionary and implementing these programs that I hope will be a model for the rest of the state. So thank you for what you're doing in the Hampton-based district as well. Grandma and Grandpa want to come up too? And this is beautiful Alyssa. And this is Alyssa's lawn. Long, named after Alyssa. These two. Now I'm going to give you two extra to get to. This is Paris. Get this to. Please get this to. To my champions who are always at my side. We've been collecting coupons. Yeah. There you go. Add this to your collection. With our sponsors.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Have a little thing at home.
Madam Governor, thank you very much.
For teachers. And to keep our role model. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then we're just going to do a quick photo with the grandparents.
Mike, are you sure?
You're part of it. Right, if we could just step this way. If we could just, thank you.
Right here, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's like doing it all over again.